They didn't want me there. Those were the words that detonated my world like a landmine. I hadn't even gotten out of bed when my phone buzzed a photo lighting up my screen, a beach. My entire family smiling, beaming champagne glasses raised under a golden sky, and me nowhere in sight. Family getaway. The caption read my little brother Jesse had posted it. He was grinning next to my parents like nothing was wrong. Everyone was there. My mom, dad, older sister, cousins I hadn't seen in years. People the first had paid to help when things got rough, and they didn't even tell me. At first, I stared at the screen, waiting for some kind of message to pop up. Maybe they'd say we missed you or wish you could have come or something. Anything. But nope. Just radio silence. I scrolled through Jesse's other post, a yacht rental rooftop dinner spa shots. My hands started to sweat. I checked my messages. No invites, no heads up. My heart thudded in my chest like it wanted to punch its way out. I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring, sounding completely casual. Hey, bud. No apology, no hesitation. Like he hadn't just gotten caught red-handed. I went straight to it. Where are you guys? A pause. Then on vacation. My stomach twisted without me. He let out a sigh like I was the one being dramatic. We figured you wouldn't be interested. You're always busy with work, you know. Thought we'd give you space. Space? My voice cracked. Part confusion, part disbelief. Dad, I send you $2,500 every month to help out. You didn't think maybe I deserved to be asked. Another pause. Then he said it. We didn't want you there, just like that. Cold clean, like a knife through the ribs. We thought it'd be better without the tension, he added. You've been different lately. It's like you bring the mood down. I could barely hear him over the blood rushing in my ears. I was gripping my phone so tight it could have snapped in half. Different. How, I asked. Not because I didn't know, but because I wanted him to say it out loud. He shrugged it off. You just stress everyone out. Always talking about responsibilities, money bills. It's a vacation, Miles. We needed to relax. I hung up. Not because I was speechless, but because I knew if I stayed on, I'd say something I couldn't take back. That night, I opened my banking app transfer, canceled family emergency fund, emptied into my personal account. Joint account closed. I didn't even flinch. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not joy, not revenge, just stillness, the kind that comes when you stop bleeding. For people who don't even notice your cut. I blocked them all. My dad, my mom, my siblings. Gone. It was like flicking off the lights in a room I never wanted to step foot in again. But the darkness didn't last. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Aunt Margot. Your mom's hysterical. What happened? My cousin Diana. Wait, did you really stop sending money? Why? And then came the guilt bombs. You're being unbelievably selfish. They raised you. You owe them. But the worst message wasn't anonymous. It was from my dad. Blocked number, new phone. You really think you can walk away from your family? You're pathetic. Enjoy being alone. I stared at the message. No anger, no sadness, just numbness. They weren't sorry. They weren't trying to make things right. They were pissed their money tree had stopped blooming. That's all. I made breakfast. The quiet that followed was delicious. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing myself for a late-night money request, a panicked call, or a last-minute favor. I just lived. That lasted until 3 p.m. Bang, 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 bang. I peeked through the people. My sister Elise. I considered ignoring her, but I knew better. She'd just wait outside and cause a scene. I opened the door. Leaning against the frame, she stormed in like she owned the place. What the hell, Miles? I didn't flinch. Nice to see you two. She whirled around, fury in her eyes. Mom's been crying non-stop. Dad's furious. You can't just abandon them like this. I crossed my arms. Abandon? You mean the way they went on vacation and abandoned me? She froze. Did they even mention me? I asked. Silence. Right, I said. Exactly. She bit her lip. It's not that simple. No, Elise, it is. I've been your safety net for years. I paid their bills, cleared their debt-covered emergencies. You know what I got in return? Exclusion. Disrespect. Silence. She swallowed hard. They need you. No, I said, stepping closer. They need my money. There's a difference. She opened her mouth to argue but stopped. You want to help them? I asked. Great, you take over the expenses. Let's see how long you last. She looked away. That's not fair. It's perfectly fair. She hesitated, then turned to leave at the door. She paused. They're not going to stop. I nodded. Neither will I. She left, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I smiled. They were finally going to feel what it was like to live without me, and I was finally going to find out what life looked like when I stopped being their ATM. But this was only the beginning. The next morning, I showed up to work like normal, half hoping that maybe things had cooled down. I hadn't responded to any more messages. I didn't know anyone an explanation, and honestly, I felt lighter. Lighter than I had in years. But peace has a short lifespan in my world. Right after lunch, I got called into my manager's office. Hey, Miles? Got a second, that casual tone neutral. But something was off. He never called me in unless it was important. I followed him in heart, suddenly thudding in my chest. He closed the door behind me, then sat down and rubbed his temples. This is going to sound weird, he started. But your mom called this morning. My stomach sank. She said you were going through an emotional crisis. He said carefully that you'd cut off your family, were making reckless financial decisions, and might need time off. I didn't say anything for a second, just stared at him. He leaned back. Look, I told her your personal life isn't my business, but I need to ask. Are you okay? I nodded slowly. I'm fine. I just stopped sending my parents money. They're pissed, so now they're trying to sabotage me. He blinked. Wow, that's messed up. Yeah, I said with a dry laugh. You have no idea. He waved his hand. As far as I'm concerned, that call never happened. But if they keep reaching out, let me know. I don't tolerate harassment. I thanked him and left his office feeling equal parts furious and exhausted. They hadn't even waited a full week before trying to drag my job into this. I guess when guilt didn't work, they figured they'd attack the one thing I had left my stability. But if they thought that was going to make me come crawling back, they clearly hadn't been paying attention. By the time I got home that evening, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, some from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Others from people I barely remembered. My cousin, Evie. Is it true you cut your parents off, Uncle Rob? Your mom called me crying. What's going on? Even my childhood neighbor. Hey, just wanted to check in. Your dad said you're having some kind of breakdown. And then came the real gems. Mom, you're acting like a selfish stranger. We don't deserve this, Dad. This is childish. You'll regret turning your back on your family, Barbara. Again. They're thinking about selling the house. Are you really okay, watching them lose everything? I almost laughed. Lose everything. They'd been living off me for years, covering rent, credit cards, even that new water heater they conveniently couldn't afford. And the moment the free ride ended, their world started to crumble. But the worst part, none of them actually asked how I was. Not once. They weren't concerned about me, just what they were losing. So I did what I should have done days ago. I picked up my phone and started typing me. I don't owe you anything. Me, I supported you for years. You excluded me from a family trip and didn't even try to hide it. That told me everything I needed to know. Me. You only care when my money is involved. That ends now. I hit send, then I blocked them, all of them. Mom, Dad, Elise, extended family, anyone who tried to manipulate me back into that role. I cut the cords, every last one. And the silence that followed, it was beautiful. For the first time in years, my paycheck stayed untouched. No random withdrawals, no last-minute emergencies. Just peace. I had breathing room. I started eating out more. Got a gym membership. Treated myself to a weekend away. Nothing crazy, but enough to remember what freedom felt like. And that's when it hit me. They'd never needed me. They'd just gotten used to me. That thought turned something inside me. A slow, burning anger I'd ignored for too long. I'd spent years skipping things I wanted, passing on trips, deferring dreams, because I was constantly picking up their slack. And now that they had to fend for themselves, they acted like I was the villain. By the end of the second week, I'd started getting texts from unknown numbers, blocked caller voicemail. Another blocked number, more voicemail. I ignored them until one came in late at night. A local number. Curiosity got the better of me. I played the voicemail. My mom's voice came through, trembling but fake sweet miles. "Honey, we just want to talk. Can we please meet? Maybe we can work something out? We're worried about you." I deleted it. Then an hour later, a message from an actual friend popped up. "Derek. Yo, dude, your mom just messaged me on Facebook. Everything okay?" I blinked. They were reaching out to my friends now. Me. What did she say? He sent a screenshot. I read it in stunned silence. "Derek, I hate to involve you, but Miles has been acting unstable. We think he might be in trouble emotionally. He's isolating himself and lashing out. Please let us know if you hear from him. We're just worried. Unstable." I clenched my jaw so hard it popped. I called Derek right away before he could say anything. I launched in. "They're lying. I'm fine. They're mad because I stopped funding their lifestyle." He snorted. "Bro, relax. I didn't believe a word of it. I just figured you should know." We chatted for a bit, then hung up. I sat in silence, heart thudding in my chest. This wasn't guilt-tripping anymore. This was character assassination. They were trying to paint me as crazy, to win sympathy, to make themselves the victims. I should have seen it coming. If they couldn't guilt me or shame me, they'd try to discredit me. But if they wanted a war, fine. I wasn't afraid to fight back anymore. They wanted to control the story. Twist it, flip it. Make me the villain in a tale where I was the only one who ever showed up when it mattered. I could have ignored it, stayed quiet. Let them spin their little drama to everyone with a Facebook account and a phone line. But I was done playing nice. If they wanted to play dirty, fine. I'd show them what the truth actually looked like. I sat at my kitchen table and started typing. Nothing dramatic, no long rants, just the truth. Clean, measured, final. "Hey everyone, just to clear things up. No, I'm not going through a breakdown. I didn't cut off my family because I'm unstable. I cut them off because they've been using me for years. I paid their bills, covered emergencies, helped with debts month after month. They took a full-blown family vacation without even telling me. And when I asked why, my dad said, "We didn't want you there." So I stopped funding their lifestyle. Now they're spreading lies, trying to make it sound like I'm having some kind of crisis. I'm fine. I'm just done being their personal bank. Thought you should know." I hit post and let it fly. And just like that, the silence cracked. The reactions came in fast, likes, shocked emojis, comments. People the first hadn't heard from in years were tagging each other, asking questions, digging in. Then the private messages started. "Cousin Maddie, wait. They excluded you after everything you've done." "Uncle Jared." I knew something felt off. "Your mom called me last week, acting like the world was ending. I didn't mention any of this. My old college roommate." "Bro, I don't even know your family. But I'm mad for you." For a minute, I just sat there and watched the waves roll in. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The story spoke for itself. And the best part? People started pushing back at them. Public comments. Blunt ones. Brutal ones. "You called him selfish while pocketing his money every month. How do you go on a beach vacation with the money he said and leave him behind?" This is financial abuse, plain and simple. I could practically hear the meltdown happening behind the scenes. My phone buzzed again, this time a message from Elise. "Elise, seriously, you aired our family drama for everyone to see." "Me, no. I corrected the lies you were helping spread." "Elise, Mom's humiliated me. She should have thought about that before telling people I was unstable." No response. Didn't need one. I could imagine the kitchen table in my parents' house, my mom pacing my dad red in the face, Elise trying to mediate while secretly texting me. It used to make me anxious, imagining that chaos. But not anymore. Now it just felt distant, like a bad sitcom I wasn't part of anymore. But I wasn't finished, since they were so committed to dragging me into messes I didn't create. I decided it was time to return the favor. I dialed a number. I hadn't called in over a year. "Ryan?" "Hey, it's Miles." The pause on the other end was brief but surprised. "Miles." "Everything okay, better than ever," I said. "Just wanted to give you a quick heads up. I won't be covering my parents' rent anymore. Whatever arrangement they had through me, it's done." There was a low chuckle. "I figured this day might come." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Ryan sighed. "Your parents have been behind a few times. Every time they'd say, 'Don't worry, our son will handle it,' like it was automatic." "Of course." "Yeah," I said. "Not anymore. They're on their own now." He grunted. "Got it. I'll follow up with them directly." I hung up and stared at the wall for a long minute. Not angry, not upset, just satisfied. No more lifelines, no more rescues, no more default safety nets. Let them feel the pressure. Let them scramble. I had nothing left to give. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And it didn't take long for the consequences to start showing up at my door. Literally, it was around 6:30. The next evening, I was finishing dinner, Netflix humming in the background, when I heard pounding on my door. I peeked through the people. My mom. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there watching her shift nervously, her eyes darting around like she wasn't sure if she should even be there. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. She looked rough, puffy eyes, makeup smeared shoulders, hunched like she was carrying something too heavy to bear. "Miles," she said, voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. "About what?" Her lip trembled. "Mr. Ryan called. He said you canceled the rent support." I nodded once I did. She looked down. We can't afford the full amount right now. Your father's hours got cut, and I raised a hand. You didn't want me in your life, so I assumed you didn't want my help either." "It's not like that." "No," I said, leveling my voice. "Because when you were sipping cocktails on a beach I paid for, that's what it felt like." Her eyes welled up again. "We made a mistake." "No," I said quietly. "You made a choice. You chose to exclude me, to lie, to pretend I didn't exist until you needed something." She sniffled. "We were wrong." I shook my head. "You are cruel." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. I stepped back and started to close the door. "You'll figure it out. You always do." She panicked. "So you're just going to let us struggle?" I met her eyes. "Welcome to my side of the story." And I shut the door. It was quiet for a moment. Then I heard her footsteps retreat down the hall. I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess myself. I sat back down, took a bite of my food, and pressed play. Because this time, I wasn't going back. This time I wasn't breaking. They thought silence meant weakness, but silence was strategy. And now, for once, it was their turn to live with the consequence. As after that final door shut, I expected things to settle. It felt like I'd drawn a line in stone. I was clear, final, unshakable. But peace, as I was learning, doesn't always mean quiet. Sometimes it's just the calm before they change their strategy. The first week afterward was oddly peaceful. No more random numbers, no fake concern, just stillness. I went to work, hit the gym, eat dinner in silence. And I enjoyed it. Every second. I didn't realize how heavy things had been until the weight was finally gone. But with every day that passed, a small part of me knew it wasn't over. Not with people like them. Not with people who view boundaries as temporary inconveniences. I figured they'd try guilt again. Maybe show up with tears bag one more time. What I didn't expect was for them to go nuclear. It started with a phone call from Air Miles. "Can you step into my office for a moment?" It was our director this time, not my manager. Bigger office, less small talk. I followed her in heart tight again, like it was trying to whisper a warning I wasn't quite hearing. She closed the door gently. No expression on her face, just calm professionalism. "We received an anonymous tip about you this morning," she said. "Someone emailed saying you'd been misusing company funds and emotionally harassing staff." My stomach dropped. What I barely got the word out. She held up a printed email. It was sent to corporate and CC to our ethics team. There are no names attached, but the email includes details about your schedule, your apartment address, even your old direct deposit routing number. Things only someone close to you would know. I stood there frozen. "You don't believe it, do you?" She shook her head. "No. Your record's spotless, but we're still required to look into it. So there will be a standard review." My ears rang standard review, which meant temporary restrictions. A shadow over my name. People talking, wondering, whispering. They hadn't just tried to shame me. They were trying to ruin me. I left work early that day, not because I was in trouble, but because I couldn't sit at my desk pretending everything was normal. The moment I got home, I sat down and stared at the wall. Why? Why take it this far? Why sabotage my job, my reputation? And the answer hit me harder than I expected. Because they knew they couldn't control me anymore. They had no leverage, no power. So the only thing left was to destroy what they couldn't own. That night, I called Derek again. My closest friend, someone who had been with me through all of it. He answered instantly. "Hey, you good?" "No," I said quietly. "They took it to work, reported me anonymously." Lies, personal stuff. He cursed under his breath. "Jesus, yeah." I said it's past manipulation now. They're trying to burn my life down. A pause then. "So what now?" And I knew even as he asked. This wasn't something I could ignore anymore. It wasn't about distance, it was about survival. "I'm going public," I said. Not just another post, not just vague hints. I was going to lay it all out. Every dollar I gave, every lie they told, every consequence they refused to accept. No more hiding. I pulled up my notes app and started typing. You want to know what betrayal looks like? It looks like sending your parents $2,500 a month for 3 years, covering their rent bills, medical emergencies, and being excluded from a vacation you paid for. It looks like being told we didn't want you there by the man who raised you. It looks like blocking your entire family and then watching them lie to everyone saying you're unstable just because their free ride ended. It looks like them anonymously reporting you to your job, trying to destroy the only thing they never controlled. I'm not unstable, I'm done. And if anyone still believes their version of the story, feel free to stop following me too. I'm not cleaning up their mess anymore. I posted it, public. No filters, no turning back. And then I turned off my phone and went for a walk. When I came back 2 hours later, I had over 400 messages. DMs from friends, comments from strangers, screenshots of people defending me. People who had seen through the manipulation. One message stood out more than any other from Ryan. "The landlord saw your post. Wanted you to know your parents haven't paid rent this month. They told me you had promised to start covering it again. I assumed they were lying. Glad I did. They were still lying even after everything. They just couldn't accept the truth that I was gone, that their son had grown a spine and wasn't bending anymore." I responded, "Thanks, Ryan. If they say anything else, don't believe it. And if they push back, let me know. I'm happy to provide receipts," he replied with a thumbs up emoji. That small win felt bigger than it should have, because it meant I was finally setting the story straight. But the real turning point came the next morning. I got a message request from my Uncle Peter, my dad's older brother. We hadn't spoken in years. "Peter saw your post. I want you to know what your parents are doing is disgusting. They did the same to me 20 years ago. Used me, drained me, then cut me off when I couldn't help anymore. You're not alone." I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't alone. This pattern, they didn't invent it with me. They just kept running it on whoever let them. And now I was done for good. I started sleeping better, eating more. My smile felt real again. People who mattered were checking in not out of pity, but because they respected what I'd done. I wasn't their crutch anymore. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole on my own. But I knew it wasn't over. Because when people like them lose control, they don't just sit quietly. They look for other targets. And next, they were going after my peace. Peace isn't just about silence. It's about knowing who you are, even when everything around you tries to twist that truth. That's what I was learning slowly, day by day. After that post, things shifted. The wave of support kept growing. People who had once sided with my parents or stayed silent started messaging me privately. A few even apologized. Others just said, "Hey, I've been there too." And those words meant more than I could explain. It wasn't just me anymore, but while I was building clarity, they were building something else. Desperation. It came to a head the following Sunday. I just finished cleaning up after breakfast, finally enjoying the quiet that used to make me feel guilty. My phone buzzed with a notification, one I hadn't seen in years. Tag from Barbara, my sister. She never tagged me in anything. Not birthdays, not holidays, not even when I helped her with rent that one year. I clicked it. It was a photo collage, old family pictures, me as a kid, Mom, Dad, Alice, Barbara, everyone smiling. One of those filtered, emotional-looking posts you'd expect during Mother's Day or a funeral. The caption, "Family isn't perfect. We all make mistakes. But at the end of the day, we only get one. We love you, Miles. We always have. We miss you. And the door is always open." At first glance, it looked sweet like a peace offering. But I wasn't stupid. I read it again and then again. And it hit me. The message wasn't for me. Not really. It was for everyone else. Watching everyone who saw my post. Everyone who started asking them questions. This was damage control disguised as an olive branch. They weren't apologizing. They were reframing me. I didn't comment, didn't message her. I just took a screenshot and shot back. It was a clever move, I'll give them that. But if they thought I was going to fall for it, they hadn't learned a damn thing. Later that day, Derek dropped by. He brought coffee. No questions asked. Just like he always did when things were heavy. We sat on my balcony, sipping quietly, city humming below us. I finally spoke. "They posted a 'We love you' tribute today." He snorted. "Oh, God. Did they throw in a violin soundtrack?" I smirked. "Almost." He shook his head. "They're trying to flip the script, play the victim. I've seen that. Move 100 times. I nodded. "It's not even about me anymore. It's about how they look to everyone else. That's always been the game, man." And he was right. They never cared about fixing things. They just didn't want to look bad. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to react. Not with another post, not with a rant, not even with a text. They wanted attention. I wasn't giving it to them. Instead, I focused on something else. I started writing everything down. Not for revenge, not to post, but just for me. Every dollar I sent, every call I answered, every time I said yes when I should have said no. I wrote the dates, the events, the messages. It was like mapping the anatomy of manipulation and reading it all back. It was undeniable. This wasn't one moment of betrayal. It was a pattern, years of slow erosion, of taking advantage, twisting guilt into obligation, rewriting history whenever it suited them, and I let it happen for too long. That night I opened a blank document and wrote a letter. Not to them, to myself. You did what you had to do. You gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left. And when you finally drew the line, they hated you for it. Not because you were wrong, but because you were finally right. You didn't lose a family. You left behind people who never acted like one. I didn't cry while writing it. I thought I might, but I didn't. Because when the truth settles in your bones, it no longer weighs you down. It holds you up. That weekend, I got another unexpected message, this time from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Maya. We'd gone to college together. She'd met my parents once back when I invited her to dinner during a holiday break. She'd messaged me after seeing the whole story unfold online. Maya, I know this might be random, but I just want to say you're incredibly strong. I met your parents once that night. I could feel something was off. They acted like you were invisible until you paid the bill. I never forgot it. I stared at that message for a long time. Even back then, people noticed. Even when I couldn't see it. They were never hiding what they were. I just refused to believe it. And finally, I had fully. I wasn't mourning anymore. I wasn't hoping they'd change. I was just done. That realization didn't bring relief. It brought peace. But of course, peace doesn't mean they stop. The final straw came 3 days later. Another message from a neighbor. Not mine. My parents. Linda. Hey, Miles. I know things have been rough, but your mom came by today. She was crying, said you were refusing to speak to her, even though she's sick. I didn't know what to say. Sick. That was new. I messaged back. Did she say what kind of sickness, Linda? She just kept saying it's serious and that she doesn't have much time left. Asked me if I could reach out to you. I'm so sorry. I thought you should know. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat very still, breathing slowly. Could it be true? Was this it? I picked up my phone and called her doctor. Not out of panic, but clarity. I still had access to her old clinic. Info from when I used to manage her appointments. Receptionist answered. Hi, this is Miles Reed. I'm calling about my mother, Regina Reed. I just received word that she may be very ill. Is there anything you can confirm? Pause. Regina Reed hasn't been seen here in over 6 months. There are no new entries in her file. I thanked her, hung up, closed my eyes. There it was. The final lie. Faking illness to reel me back in. Using death as bait. That's when I realized something deep in my chest had changed. A door had shut, and this time it didn't just click. It locked. I didn't cry. Not when I heard the voicemail. Not when I confirmed the truth. Not when I finally realized what it all meant. That they'd even lie about dying if it meant pulling me back in. It was like watching someone throw their last card on the table, knowing they'd already lost. It didn't hurt. It didn't even surprise me. It confirmed what I already knew. There was no line they wouldn't cross but me. I'd already walked away from the table. That night, I sat with my thoughts. No music, no background noise, just stillness. And I finally allowed myself to ask the question I'd avoided for years. What if they were never going to love me the way I loved them? Not a bitter question. Not angry, just honest. What if I had been chasing something that never existed? Something I kept trying to earn by sacrificing more time, money, dignity, until there was nothing left but obligation. And still, it wasn't enough. That's the part no one talks about, how hard it is to accept that people you called family never actually saw you. They saw what you could give them. And when that giving stopped, so did their version of love. I needed to close the loop, not for them, for me. I pulled up one final message to Barbara. I heard what Mom told the neighbor. There's nothing wrong with her. I checked, I had to be sure. And now I am. This is the last time I'll be saying anything to you or to them. There is no more door. There is no open invitation. There's just a boundary. Firm, final, and not up for debate. Tell Mom and Dad they can live whatever story they want to tell themselves. But I won't be in it. I'm done being the villain in a script they wrote out of greed and entitlement. I'm not angry anymore. I just have nothing left to give. And maybe that's the most freeing thing of all. I hit send, then blocked her. No dramatics, no buildup, just silence. The real kind this time. The kind that isn't empty. It's full of clarity. The days that followed were different, lighter. There was no more checking the phone, no more preparing for the next guilt trip. I stopped bracing for conflict that never should have existed in the first place. Instead, I made space for healing for people who chose me without conditions, for laughter that didn't come with strings. I reached out to Maya again. We started grabbing coffee every other week. The conversations were easy, no drama, no emotional landmines, just two people figuring life out in peace. Derek and I went hiking. We'd always talked about it, but I'd never had the mental space. Now, no more excuses. And I finally started working on the project I'd been putting off for years. A digital startup idea that had lived in my notes app for far too long. Funny how you find energy when your soul isn't constantly bleeding for people who don't appreciate it. I even heard from Ryan again. He told me my parents had finally moved out of the rental. I couldn't keep up with the payments. He offered to send me their forwarding address, but I said no. There was no forwarding for this chapter. It had ended. Clean, clear, honest. A few weeks later, I ran into Elise by chance grocery store parking lot. She looked surprised, hesitant. "Hey," she said, like the word weighed more than it should have. "Hey," I replied. A bit of silence passed. She shifted awkwardly. "They're still struggling, you know." I nodded. "They'll manage. They always find a way when they have to." Another pause. Then she looked at me, something real flickering in her eyes. "You seem better," she said quietly. "I am." She didn't argue, didn't try to guilt me, just gave me a small, sad smile. "I hope they don't mess it up with you forever," I shrugged. "They already did, and then I left. Not with anger, not with some mic drop exit. Just peace, because closure isn't always loud. Sometimes it's walking away. When you finally understand that love, real love, doesn't come with a receipt attached. Months passed, then half a year my finances stabilized. I started investing slowly but smart. My apartment finally felt like mine, not just a bunker between requests. More importantly, I felt like I was living forward, not trapped in a loop of damage control. One night, I found myself scrolling through my old photo backups, years of images, family dinners, holiday trips, screenshots of money transfers, birthday gifts I never received in return. I paused on one photo. Me, probably 25, holding up a cake I bought for my dad's birthday. Big smile on my face, tired eyes. Back then, I thought love was earned by how much you gave up for it. Now I know better. Love without respect isn't love. It's servitude in disguise. And I'm done being anyone's servant. That night, I deleted the whole folder. Not out of hate, but because some chapters don't deserve to be read. I went to bed feeling light whole. The next morning, I made breakfast, sipped my coffee by the window, and smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was no debt to repay, no apology to chase, no approval to earn. Just me and peace. And for once, that was more than enough. Story 2. You can give your brother $500K. My mother got into a fight. I responded icily. I'm not your personal ATM. Then they lost everything when they put the family home at danger. I was mistaken to think that family was the safest place on earth. I learned a hard fact from life. Not every child at home gets the same amount of affection. Hello? I'm Olivia, and I'm 36. In my own home, I've always felt like a visitor. I was aware from a young age that I was not like my younger brother Tyler. He was the family star by the age of 2. I was taught to rely on myself from a young age. Tyler received a lot of love and attention, but I was allowed to work things out on my own. Our parents belonged to the typical middle class. Money was never a major issue. They had the resources to raise us both properly, but they gave Tyler all of their hopes, affection, and focus instead. My parents went out of their way to buy Tyler everything he asked for. However, they always had an excuse to turn me down if I ever asked for anything. I recall getting a teddy bear for Christmas when I was 6 years old. I kept it near to my heart every night since. I loved it so much. However, Tyler sobbed and pleaded for the identical one as soon as he saw it. My mother immediately took it from me and handed it to him. I started crying. You're the older sister Olivia was, all she said at 12. You ought to present it to your brother. I had a piano concert after months of practice, though that they never showed there. I was thrilled to see my parents among the throng. They decided to take Tyler to the doctor since he had a little cold. I won a scientific competition at the state level when I was 14. At home, nobody brought it up. Tyler scored 1 goal in his school soccer match that same day. You can probably guess who received a party. I persisted in trying and hoped that they would take notice, but whatever I accomplished was never sufficient. Then on my 18th birthday, something occurred that completely altered my life. I received a full scholarship to a prestigious institution after high school. I glanced at my parents while holding the admission letter, hoping to see pride on their cheeks for once. My mother, however, sighed and whispered softly, Olivia, is it really necessary for you to travel so far for college? We're poor, and who will take care of us at home if you go? Confused. I stood there. My father then made a direct addition. In 2 years, Tyler will be attending college. The expense of his tuition will be high. You two are beyond our means. I was taken aback. I do, however, have a scholarship. It's all paid for, I said. My mom gave a headshake. That simply includes tuition. What about other expenses like food and rent? Living away from home is costly. Then it suddenly struck me. For Tyler, they were prepared to cover everything, but not even my most basic need. I'll manage. I answered, taking a long breath and gathering my strength if necessary. Living expenses are covered by my scholarship. I will secure a part-time position. I refuse to seek assistance. I will not be a burden to anyone. The room was silent as she waited for my father to speak. My mother glanced at him. He crossed his arms, groaned, and uttered a flat grumble. Do as you please." My mother gave a chilly, uninterested nod. "I won't stop you if that's your choice. No happiness, no help, no words of support. Just icy quiet." They were not sad that their daughter was permanently leaving the house. I departed the next day. I entered a life of full freedom at that point. I had no option but to live in a dorm. Even though I didn't enjoy it, every dime was important. I knew then whether I wanted to live or die. I was alone. I decided to major in real estate, not because I like it, but rather because, in my case, it was a quick way to get money. It wasn't always possible to pursue ambitions through a school. I needed something useful to get by. I was hired by a real estate company on a part-time basis. Although the hourly wage was meager, at $15 commissions were paid for each sale or lease. Determining to succeed, I poured myself into the work. One had no identity, no contacts, and no experience. While others relaxed in their leisure time, I remained resolute. I researched the market, worked on my sales techniques, and developed my client handling abilities. I watched senior agents carefully commit their speech patterns and customer persuasion techniques to memory. It seemed unreal to close my first rental. I gaped in shock when I noticed the $200 commission in my account. I made actual money from my own work for the first time. My necessities were met and my debts were paid by that work. I began carefully planning every expense, saving money, and creating a budget. I wasn't only trying to survive. I was establishing the foundation for my future self. My parents would occasionally call, but usually just for formal purposes. They were always asking superficial questions. "How are you doing? Are you still attending classes? Tyler is also putting in a lot of work." My response was brief. "I'm all right." They didn't care and never inquired as to what I was actually doing. I eventually gave up on sharing anything. I had 3 years of experience and a solid clientele. After I graduated, I immediately started working closing deals, expanding my network, and collecting commissions rather than taking a break. However, I had no desire to remain a broker indefinitely. I desired to be the owner. I purchased my first home, a $500,000 property. 2 years later, I borrowed the remaining amount after making an upfront payment of $300,000. It wasn't simple. I calculated risks and considered every aspect for weeks, but I felt in my heart that it was the correct thing to do. I became a property owner on that day. I didn't tell my relatives about the transaction. Telling them was pointless. I felt justified in keeping it to myself since it was my accomplishment. That first attribute became the starting point. I continued. I continued to work, invest, and grow. In just 5 years, I had a number of flats and business buildings, and I even began making hotel investments. By 28, I had practically everything I dreamt of. Meanwhile, Tyler, my brother, couldn't hold a job. He hopped from one place to another, never remaining beyond 6 months. Every time he failed, my parents made excuses. He just hasn't found the appropriate job yet. His talent was not recognized by that organization. He is young. He has a variety of options. He was never held accountable by them. I had no intention of showing how far I had come. However, despite your best efforts, certain facts will inevitably come to light. I received a brief communication from my mother 2 years ago. "Tomorrow, are you free? Come have supper at home. Don't say hello, no inquiries. A chilly invitation only." As if I were an unknown person. I paused and nearly said no. My last visit had been eons ago. Perhaps they truly wanted to see me this time. I arrived around 7:00 p.m. Everything felt the same. The home, the atmosphere. They gave me the impression that I had never left. It was a normal dinner. Everyone was talking about Tyler. Tyler is attempting a new career. He's considering starting a company. All he needs is a little more time to calm down. Silently, I listened. I wasn't shocked by any of it. Then everything changed in an instant. My phone buzzed on the dining table while I was in the kitchen getting water. I choose to disregard it. Tyler didn't. "Did your guy send you a text?" "I'll check." With a sly smile, he took my phone. Notifications appeared on the screen. Tyler read it right away. His expression changed from amused to startled. He read it out loud before I could stop him. "The contract has been verified. The resort Hillside Retreat bought one for $200,000. A hush fell over the room. My mom's blinks were quick. My dad placed his chopsticks down. Tyler folded his arms and gave a dry laugh. Are you serious? A resort will cost $1.2 million. Nobody talked in a composed manner. I grabbed my phone, shut off the screen, and turned to look at them. They yelled in their eyes, shock, incredulity, and even bitterness. My mom's voice faltered. Is this genuine, Olivia? Slowly I nodded. Indeed. I purchased a little resort. My dad's voice became icy. How did you obtain such a large sum of money? I remained silent as I waited as anticipated. Tyler gave a smirk. You've been hiding this from us for how long? The stress increased. All that reverberated was the sound of the clock and cutlery. I studied my voice and put my hands on the table. I didn't keep it to myself. Nobody ever inquired. As though I were a stranger. Their gazes turned aloof. My mother's voice softened strangely after a few minutes. I never thought you would succeed. I've always assumed you work in an office. I remained silent, simply gazed at her. She softly patted my hand, a touch I couldn't even remember getting before. My daughter is gifted. We could have given you greater advice if you had notified us sooner. Silently, I drew my hand back. I can handle things on my own just fine. She grinned as she looked at my dad. What are your thoughts? Isn't it time for us to relocate to a nicer home? It feels very cramped here. Now that Olivia is doing well, it's only fair. My dad sipped his wine and nodded. There is a lovely suburban estate, large, roomy yard, garden. About $2 million was spent. Olivia shouldn't have any trouble now. With a calm tone, I put down my glass. 2 million mom grand expectations shining in their eyes. Indeed, a better house. Enough space for everyone. Room for visitors. Doesn't this house seem little to you? I cocked my head, observing her intently. Are you requesting that I purchase a home for the family? She promptly rectified herself. Smooth voice. Do not purchase, invest. We will share the house, but it remains in your name. Now you are the one who has succeeded. You ought to lend a hand a bit. I laughed a little dryly. She seemed to be attempting to sell a lucrative contract, and her comment sounded more like a business presentation. Tyler continued before I could respond. His voice steady, yet expectant. Have you ever thought of investing in a new industry? He inquired. I turned to face him. He appeared to have anticipated this moment as he crossed his arms and sat back in his chair. Which sector? I raised an eyebrow in question. He drummed his fingers on the table with a sly smile. New businesses. I remained silent, awaiting his explanation. He straightened his posture and met my gaze, his assurance unflinching. I have an amazing business idea, he said. To make it a viable business, I only need a little funding. I'm trying to find about $5 million. My eyes got big. $5 million? I said it again. Tyler gave a nod. Really? Indeed. You have the means. Your assistance would expedite the process. It will take years if I start from scratch, but I may succeed rapidly with your money. I folded my arms and leaned back. I mean, what sort of company requires that much? You're squandering almost $5 million as though it were spare coins. Tyler scowled in annoyance. It's a new business. Financial technology, market analysis. The directions are numerous. You don't have to stress over the specifics. Don't worry, I have a plan. I grinned. In other words, you have a vague concept, but nothing concrete. His expression darkened. You don't believe me. Your brother is me. Why not lend me your support for once? I laughed a little, but I felt empty inside. Growing up, I heard this plea far too often. My mom became impatient. Stop being self-centered, Olivia. Your family depends on you. But here you are with your brother, counting every penny. My dad made a pointed addition. Olivia, it's not even a huge deal. Using your funds, nothing is worth a few $100,000. After staring at them, I turned to face Tyler. Why don't you finance it yourself if it's so unimportant? Tyler flung his hands up. Because I don't want to squander years scraping up coins. If I had the funds, I could double it tenfold. I nodded slowly, as if comprehending. Therefore, what you actually want is a shortcut. His jaw stiffened. It's not a shortcut. I simply want a fair shot. I giggled again. Not out of fun, but because it was terribly familiar. My mother's voice raised. Olivia, you're being foolish. Helping your brother isn't too much to ask. You could at least invest a few $100,000, but $5 million is a lot. My dad let out a deep sigh. We don't have many demands, just a little assistance. You cannot focus just on yourself throughout your life. I put both of my hands on the table and spoke clearly and deliberately. You're correct. I've never been asked for anything by you. They gazed, anticipating the next move. I smiled at them, a little weary grin. Since you've always believed I owe you money. The air became oppressive. Nobody was brave enough to speak. I pushed my chair back into position and stood up. I'm probably going to leave now. Tyler's voice rose as he sprung up. You can't simply leave. Have you ever given this family any thought? I looked him in the eye. Has anyone in this family ever considered me quiet? I started toward the door, then stopped and turned around again. I said quietly, Steady, you accused me of being self-centered, but have you ever considered who in this family is actually self-centered? I departed with the impression that I had finally been released. However, I was mistaken. Their avarice was more profound. They weren't only in need, they were far more vicious than I had thought. A year went by. The calls and texts from my parents stopped. I figured they had stopped considering me to be their personal bank. In actuality, however, their plans were different. They provided Tyler the money for his company by mortgage the house behind my back. Nobody informed me. I discovered it after it was finished. My phone buzzed that day while I was engrossed in study at my workplace. The name of my mother flashed. I gave it a long look before responding coolly. Mom, what is it? She let out a deep sigh. It was all too familiar, that cry for sympathy. We're going to lose the house, Olivia. I went cold. Lose the house? What do you mean? Her voice faltered. We obtained a mortgage. The bank is prepared to take it now. I helped you get the house mortgaged. Why silence fell. After hesitating, she spoke quietly. I made an investment in a restaurant with your father. It would make money. A friend assured me. I said you risked the house for that. It sounded secure. Despite their claims that it was a little contribution, it was unsuccessful. I tightened my hold on the phone. What was the amount you took? She paused, then muttered, $300,000. My heart fell by $300,000. I repeated, trying to remain composed. She lost it. Olivia, please. We will be deprived of everything if we fail to repay. Are you able to assist us? It's only $300,000. We'll reimburse you. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Would you like me to pay off your $300,000 debt? Indeed. Only a loan. I swear I'll pay it back. I opened my eyes and looked out the window blankly. Even though I could afford it. Something didn't feel right. I need time to reflect. I responded calmly. She went into a panic. There's no time, Olivia. A notification has already been delivered by the bank. If you don't assist, we're done. I gripped harder. I get it, but I still require time. I hung up before she could protest because I still felt uneasy. I found my best buddy and reliable financial analyst, Jeremy, right away. He responded quickly. Olivia, what's the matter? Please inspect my folks' residence. I spoke aggressively. They say it was seized by the bank. The complete financial history is what I want. Something doesn't feel right. After a little silence, Jeremy boldly answered. I understand. Give me a moment. When night fell, Jeremy called. I picked it up right away. He talked without introducing himself. You are correct, Olivia. The $300,000 loan was secured by a mortgage on the house. There's a greater problem, he added before I could reply. My hold on the phone tightened. The loan was not signed by your parents. I stiffened. What are you saying? Jeremy took a deep breath. The only borrower on the record is Tyler. He now legally owns the house. I remained still for a while, unable to comprehend it. Repeat that the house belongs to Tyler. He is the only owner of the mortgage. Jeremy reiterated emphatically. My heart pounded. What time did that occur? Why would they give him the house? Jeremy paused before responding. A year ago, they signed it for him. Olivia. A feeling of coldness swept over me immediately as they discovered how rich you were. This was no coincidence. It was a well-thought-out strategy from the beginning. They put everything up as soon as they found out about my money. By tomorrow morning, I had stolen my voice and spoken to Jeremy. I require all of the papers that are connected to this. He responded without hesitation. Think of it as finished. I'll email it. Everything to you. After hanging up, I leaned back and gazed at the wall in silence. I was already aware of what had to be done. I went directly to my parents' place by car the following morning. It was just becoming light. Keep quiet. Still, although I wasn't rushing, I had already made up my mind. This would be the last discussion. I was first seen by my mother. Her face immediately brightened as relief watched over her. Olivia, you arrived with this coffee cup in hand. My father went outside. He arched an eyebrow, but a contented smile quickly took across his face. Have you not made up your mind? My mom spoke in a positive tone. You'll assist us. I said nothing, looking at them all. My father sat quietly, knowing that I would revert to my role as a submissive daughter. Tyler, relax, as like this didn't matter. I went inside and took out a chair and set a folder on the glass table. We must speak. After a brief glance, they took a seat across from me. As she waited for me to give in, my mother gave me a fake kind grin. I placed the mortgage documents on the table and opened the folder. The house is being taken by the bank. You told me the reality. You borrowed $300,000 and turned everything over to Tyler a year ago. My mom's smile vanished in an instant. I went on speaking in a cool but firm tone. You weren't coerced. After giving Tyler the land, you took out the loan and made up a restaurant arrangement. No money was invested. Tyler received the money straight from you. The air became dense. Mom tensed up. She had a pallid face. My father's knuckles whitened against the arm of the chair. Get some rest. Tyler did not recoil. Calmed. Not a thing. At last. My mother mumbled, her voice shaking. Now none of that matters. The important thing is that we need your assistance to rescue the house. I gave a chilly laugh. You lied in the hopes that I would simply give you the money without inquiry if I thought you were in a tight spot. As his patience wore thin, my dad cleared his throat. You're exaggerating the situation, Olivia. The funds have already been used. Now what counts is whether you will support your family. With my elbows resting on the table, I leaned forward and looked them in the eye. No, the fact that you misled me is what counts. My mother blinked rapidly, perhaps taken aback by what I had said. Tyler crossed his arms and gave a dry laugh. What the heck? You may still assist. With loathing in my eyes, I turned to face him. This is your problem, Tyler. You borrowed the money, squandered it, and now you want me to make it right. With utter indifference, he shrugged. You can assist. Millions are yours to you. $3 million is nothing. My mother happily nodded. Yes, exactly. Olivia, isn't the purpose of family to support one another? I crossed my arms after letting out a brief, meaningless laugh. Family. When I was having trouble paying for college, where was my family? When I put in endless hours to purchase my first house? Have either of you ever inquired about my well-being when I started my profession from scratch? Did you care? My father's jaw tightened. His tone grew icy. Olivia, you're being self-centered. You have all this money, but you won't give your parents even $300,000. My mother said hurriedly. Have you a heart at all? I remained still. I kept my eyes on it. Why don't you manufacture it yourself if the amount is so little? My mother was about to argue, but she remained silent. I gave them a look. Individuals who were once my family, but now were simply avaricious strangers. I inhaled deeply before speaking. I'll consider purchasing this house and allowing you to remain if you agree to sell it to me, as though she was having trouble processing what I had said. My mother's expression became blank. My father's face grew serious for the first time, unable to speak. Tyler sprung from his chair and stared at me. I spoke in a calm tone. I'll take care of things as practically as possible, if all you need is a place to reside. However, if you believe that I will continue to allow you to exploit me, avoid wasting time. My dad grasped the table, his knuckles whitened. Then, all of a sudden, he picked up a glass and flung it on the ground. The room reverberated with the sudden smash. He sprang to his feet, his face flushed with rage. You are not my daughter! Leave now! My mother looked at him and gasped. Tyler sat still, his eyes full of incredulity. I turned to face my father, expressionless. No sadness, no grief, no rage, nothing at all. I walked to the door after turning. I didn't glance back this time. The door closed behind me. This time, I wasn't going back to clean up the mess they made. I assumed it was finished. They refused to give up the house, so I let them. I didn't call, text, or check in with them again after that. I was no longer the problem. My lawyer then sent me an email a week later. Parental support lawsuit. I took it open. I was being sued. They asked me to give them money each month, claiming that since I was their daughter, I was in charge of them. They said they had given up a lot for me. They accused me of being irresponsible, self-centered, and forsaking them when they were in need. They even said that they were homeless, unemployed, and that I was obligated by law to provide for them for the remainder of their life. I grinned a chilly, meaningless grin. Were they truly this far along? I once believed that their greed was limited. I was mistaken. They wanted more than simply my money. They intended to hold me accountable for their errors. I picked up my phone and dialed my attorney. I spoke quietly, but with more vigor than before. They want to go to court and fight. All right? I'll make sure this lesson sticks in their minds. It took little time to be ready for the trial. My parents believed they could compel me to provide for them by using the legal system. However, they overlooked one point. I was no longer the defenseless child they used to dominate. I got there exactly on time on the day of the hearing. My parents were seated as I walked confidently into the courtroom. My mom appeared older. Bitterness suffused her cheeks. My father sat rigidly, his face icy. I had no feelings, no grief, no rage, no suffering, simply disgust. In a dramatic opening statement, their attorney portrayed them as destitute, powerless parents who had sacrificed everything to raise me just to be abandoned. He emphasized my riches and asserted that I would have nothing to give them, $5,000 a month. They were still attempting to steal from me. They painted me as a cold-hearted daughter who had ruthlessly abandoned her parents. Then, with a steady, calm voice, my lawyer rose to his feet. He presented the facts. My parents decided to put their home under mortgage. Tyler, not me, was the one who signed it. It was his loan, not mine. $300,000. I hadn't gotten a single dime from them since I was 18. I owed them nothing legally. After reviewing the paperwork, the court strongly declared that the defendant had no legal justification for providing financial support. This case is dropped. Just one sentence. Like a shockwave, it struck them. My mother's lips trembled and she went pale. My dad's hands clenched. For the first time, Tyler, who always pretended that nothing concerned him, showed signs of genuine fear. They lost the lawsuit they had staked everything on. I moved closer to them and looked them in the eyes. As the trial came to a conclusion, I said in a calm, quiet voice, "We will never see each other again after this. You took away the chance I gave you." My mom let out a gasp. Her face was screaming with tears. "You can't just abandon us like this, Olivia." I grinned. "It's been a while since you left me." I turned around and left. Not only had they lost money, their only kid had died. A year went by. They never got back to me. No messages, no calls, no phone. Excuses. I thought they would return to lie and plead for more cash. However, they didn't. As like they had never existed in my life. They vanished. The last person to share any information about them with me was my best buddy, Jeremy. We were enjoying coffee one evening when he abruptly blurted, "I heard something about your parents." "Where are they?" I inquired, setting down my cup. Jeremy gave a headshake. "Nobody is aware. They departed after the bank confiscated their house, and they haven't been seen since." For a time, I sat there feeling nothing. "Are any of the family members aware?" I inquired. Jeremy gave a shrug. "They're not saying anything. If they do, they're all calling you heartless right now." I laughed a little dryly. Not at all surprised. I said, "Let me guess. They claim that while I have millions, I won't invest $300,000 to keep the mansion intact. Furthermore, nobody is certain if my parents are still living." Jeremy gave a nod. "That kind of thing." I reclined in my chair and gazed out the window. It was a dazzling city. The buildings are ablaze with illumination. I had expanded my company and seen even more success in the past year, and I have absolutely no regrets. What my family fought didn't matter to me. Their critical glances didn't matter to me. When I was 18 and had to fend for myself, none of them were helpful. When I worked 3 jobs to make ends meet, none of them came to see how I was doing. When I tried to save enough money to purchase my first house, nobody helped. So why should I suddenly give a damn about what they think? How about you? How would you have responded? Would you have returned to assist a family that had taken advantage of you for years? Or would you have followed my example, cut connections, and went on? Post your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe as well to ensure that you never miss another article. Enable alerts. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Thank you for viewing. Story 3. It's only a little assistance. You're self-centered. When I refused to pay for my sister's automobile, my dad yelled at me. I permanently left. I got a call from the bank 3 days later, when everything eventually crumbled beyond repair. I was 26 years old. I had lived my entire life with the cracks. The basis of our relationships is being eroded by a little crack, increasing in width every year. My mother's birthday supper was that evening. We assembled around her dining table, which we had used for innumerable Sunday dinners and holiday get-togethers. Sister Brenda, my golden child, reveled in my father's loving gaze, who remained as strict as ever. And me, the letdown in the family, despite my self-sufficient lifestyle and steady work, as these family get-togethers typically did. The evening went on. Then Brenda revealed her secret. She twirled noodles around her fork and remarked, "I'm considering getting a new car, something adorable. A convertible, perhaps." My dad gave me a nod of approval. "Princess, you deserve it." I tried to swallow the Cabernet and my annoyance as I took a drink of wine. Brenda was 23, resided in an apartment, and worked part-time at a shop. When money came up, my parents conveniently forgot that I was already paying half the rent. With an eager smile, my father turned to face me. "Son, what do you think? I thought you would be able to assist your sister with this." The wine glass hung between my lips and the table as my hand stopped in midair. The boldness. I put my glass down carefully. Half of her rent is already paid by me. Silently, I said, "I believe that's plenty." The room's temperature appeared to drop by 10 degrees. "What is the intended meaning of that?" With that menacing edge in his voice, my father demanded. I was too familiar. "It only means what I stated. Brenda already has my financial support. She won't get a car from me." Brenda pressed her face into a well-practiced pout. "I believed your performance at work had improved. It's only a little assistance." I clenched my jaw. A small amount of assistance, similar to the small amount I had been providing her for years. The small assistance that had kept me from saving for that trip to Rome, or from relocating to a nicer flat at work. "I'm doing well. I'm not required to purchase you a car because of that." My dad's expression hardened. "You treat your sister like this, the well-known guilt trip, the hazy allusion to unidentified sacrifices, and the suggestion that I was somehow permanently obligated for being raised by what parents are expected to do anyway. Come after everything we've done for you." Something broke inside of me. "Dad, what specifically have you done for me? Tell me." "Since I funded my own education. I purchased my own vehicle. Since I was 19, I have been financially independent." His eyes swelled. "You're not thankful, I'm not ungrateful, I promise. I'm worn out getting treated like the family ATM is getting old. You pretend that Brenda is too valuable to sustain herself since she is superior to you." He slammed his hand on the table and yelled. "She was and always has been." Like smoke, the words lingered in the air. My mom let out a gasp. Brenda averted her gaze, but I simply felt relieved. And now, out loud, the truth I'd always known. I couldn't help but chuckle. I suppose she no longer needs my assistance, since she is so much superior to me. With my chair scuffing the wooden floor, I got up. That implies that I will never again, or even next month, pay her rent. My father pointed to the door as he stood to leave my house. "Thank you." I reached for my coat. "Before you empty your personal bank account, Dad, you might want to see who has been paying Brenda's rent for the previous 2 years. Brenda's eyes became wide with fear. "What is the intended meaning of that?" At the entryway, I stopped. "It indicates that I'm finished. It's been 2 years since you moved into that flat. For the past 2 years, I have paid half of your rent. Dad told you that he had contributed nothing, but he hasn't, like a fish." Her mouth expanded and closed. But according to Dad lied. I said plainly, "You're on your own now." That was the first night of the end. Or perhaps it marked the start of my independence. The concept of perspective is amusing. The consequences were severe and quick. Without my assistance, Brenda couldn't pay her rent. That first week, she phoned me 17 times. Her text changed from demanding indignantly to emotional pleas. Despite his audacious statements about family obligation, Dad refused to intervene. His financial status was not as stable as he had let everyone think. I depleted the joint emergency fund that I had stupidly kept up with Brenda, which strangely always included expensive shoes or weekend trips with pals. She handled it as though it were her own bank account, while I diligently made monthly deposits. My dad was furious. He said he would sell my automobile at age 23. The one I had purchased for myself at age 19 paid off. He lost it and accused me of being unreliable when I reminded him that the title was in my name. Said that I was destroying the family. Later on, I discovered that he had made an attempt to sell it, nevertheless, listing it online and all. When I went to get it from my parents' residence, the altercation became nasty. While my father yelled about family duty and I collected myself and packed my things into the trunk. Neighbors peered through the curtains. My mother begged us to stop creating a commotion while she stood on the porch, wringing her hands, always worried about looks. Never tell the truth. I was unaware at the time that my father had already prepared a more complex trap. I got an official-looking letter 3 days after I got my car back. As I read that, I felt sick. I noticed that my car is being repossessed. It was illogical. I had the title in my name and had paid off the automobile years prior. After being transferred many times, I gave the bank mentioned on the warning a call. At last, I had a conversation with someone who described the circumstances based on their documentation. 6 months prior, my father had obtained a title loan secured by my vehicle. My blood froze. I claimed that was not feasible. The title is mine. That was impossible for him to do. All the documents are here, sir. The representative responded. You signed it. I hadn't signed anything, though. An hour later, the documents arrived via email, and I demanded copies. I gaped at them in shock. My signature, or what appeared to be my signature on loan documents, was there. I had never seen it. My father utilized my social security number, faked my identity, and made an exact duplicate of my signature, likely from old school records he had saved. I couldn't put into words how I felt violated. Not all of this was financial trickery. It was identity theft. This was illegal. I was engulfed in anger and betrayal for the next 3 days. For months, my father had been organizing. This had been planning to utilize my car and other belongings as security for his personal financial gain, while requesting that I assist in providing for his favorite child. The bank was strong yet understanding. They threatened to seize the automobile unless I paid back the $7,000 debt my father had taken out. Paying down a debt was one of my few alternatives. I never lost my transportation or filed fraud accusations against my own father. I went with option number 4. I paid off the bogus loan, sold the automobile myself, and used the proceeds to purchase a less expensive car. Although it represented a major downgrade, it was one more way for my father to maintain control. He called in a fit of wrath after learning what I had done. I can't even sell that automobile. I knew he needed the money. Didn't I? I knew what this would do to the family, didn't I? Without answering, I hung up. I no longer had his problems. The biggest betrayal was still to come, though. 3 weeks following that catastrophic supper, I learned that my father had been steadily depleting our family's savings account, which I had been making contributions to since I was 16 years old. When I started my first job in order to pay for Brenda's buying habits and his own failing business endeavors, he had been taking out loans against it. That account still had my name on it. The following morning, I went to the bank and took out all the last penny, $7,853 in total. It wasn't a fortune, but given what he'd stolen, it was mine. After that, I terminated the account. It was that afternoon that my phone rang. The name of my father appeared on the screen. Do you believe you're accomplishing something? His voice was a mix of alarm and anger, taking what is rightfully mine. Before you take what is not, I answered. sounding more composed than I actually was. That money was necessary to me. He yelled, "Next week the collectors will arrive." My heart pounded from understanding rather than dread. Family has never been the focus of this. Using me had always been the goal. No longer my problem. This cannot be done to us. We are related. Family members do not steal from one another. Dad? In order to change the locks on my apartment door, I hung up, blocked his number, and blocked Brenda's. It was insufficient. My apartment door was open when I returned home 2 days later. I lost my TV. My grandfather left me the watch and my laptop. My spare key was taken from my mother's emergency contact list by my father. I made a report and called the police at a pawn shop across town. They discovered my electronics, the receipt for my father's signature, which the proprietor remembered. I contacted a lawyer, recorded my father on the phone admitting to the theft, threatened to press charges unless he returned every dollar he'd ever taken from me. He paid every cent, and I cut all ties. This decision to completely sever connections with my family wasn't made impulsively. It came after nights of packing my apartment, hands trembling, questioning everything I thought I knew about family and obligation. I'd been raised to believe that family bonds were unbreakable, sacred, that you forgave family no matter what, because blood was thicker than water. My father had repeated these mantras my entire life, even as he systematically exploited and undermined me. The cognitive dissonance was suffocating. How could I abandon the people who had raised me? What kind of person walks away from their family completely? But then, what kind of father steals from his son? What kind of father forges signatures and drains bank accounts? What kind of father breaks into his child's home? The guilt of leaving fought with the fear of staying connected. I wrote pages of pros and cons, called an old therapist, talked it through with the 2 friends who knew the full situation. The turning point came one night at 3 a.m. I was lying awake, my stomach in knots, when a simple question formed in my mind. Would I allow anyone else to treat me this way? The answer was immediate and clear. No! Never. So why was I allowing it from people who were supposed to love me more than anyone else? That clarity didn't make the decision easier. It just made it necessary. I moved to a new apartment, changed jobs, went completely off the grid as far as my family was concerned. Sometimes the only way to heal is to remove yourself from the source of the pain. The first few months of no contact with the hardest holidays left me hollow. Earth days passed unmarked. I'd reach for my phone to text Brenda about a movie she'd love or call my mom when I cooked one of her recipes. Then I'd remember they weren't part of my life anymore. I'd wonder if I'd made the right choice, if I was overreacting, if I should just apologize and try to mend things. Then I'd remember the theft, the lies, the years of manipulation. And I'd put the phone down. The doubt would creep in at night, when the apartment felt too quiet and my thoughts too loud. Was I being cruel? Selfish? What if they needed me? What if they were sorry? But deep down, I knew the trend would only reoccur. My father would control, Brenda would take, my mother would enable, and I would be left spent and empty, wondering why I was never enough. So I held firm. I developed new traditions, met new people who respected me for who I was, not what I could supply. Slowly, the raw pain of separation began to heal into something approximating tranquility. 6 months later, Brenda emailed me. She was pregnant. The father had departed. She needed aid. "We're family," she wrote. "Families remain united." For a long while, I kept my finger over the respond button while I gazed at those words, a portion of myself. The part that was conditioned by years of responsibility and guilt wanted to jump in and save her, to show that I was a nice guy and a good brother. But there's more. The pattern, the crisis, the call to family loyalty, and the expectation that I would compromise my boundaries because she needed me, were all recognized by the part of me that was beginning to listen. I didn't answer right away. I chose to sit with the email open and analyze my emotions instead. There was worry for the unborn kid and sorrow for her predicament, a natural desire to make things better. However, there was also a deep fatigue and an understanding that until I broke the cycle, it would never stop. I didn't reply and close the email after giving it some more thought. Later that evening, I decided to designate it as spam and go on with my life. 3 years have passed since then. I can see the city from my new flat at work. I've received 2 promotions. I take trips when I feel like it. No one depletes my finances or makes me feel bad for setting limits. Healing might sometimes seem like leaving. Sometimes acknowledging that some things weren't constructed correctly in the first place is more important than repairing what's broken. I ran into my mom at the grocery store last week. We looked at each other across the vegetable area. She appeared worn out and older. Something gave me a little pain. Not nearly culpability, not nearly melancholy. The resemblance to what may have been in a different family is more accurate. She came slowly, as if I may run away. As she looked at me, she remarked, "Maybe I would have once you look well." I gave a nod. "I'm doing okay." She fidgeted with the strap of her purse. "Last month, your father suffered a heart attack." My heartbeat accelerated. Conditioning that is too old dies hard. "Is he all right?" "He'll get better." It was serious, though. I awaited the moment of guilt, the deception, the belief that I would return with a checkbook in hand. It never arrived. "I've been thinking about everything." Instead, she said, "I ought to have intervened. I ought to have kept you safe." Suddenly, my throat constricted. The script did not call for this. I did agree. "You ought to have." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't think you'll pardon him or myself. I wanted to let you know that I now knew why you left." Unconfident in my ability to talk. I nodded. Even after 3 years apart, I was still moved by her simple acknowledgement. "Brenda gave you the name of her child softly," she said, "despite anything." The bright crimson skin of the apples caught my attention as I gazed at them. "Does she still reside with you?" "She is making an effort, though currently employed full-time attending evening classes." All I could feel was remote sympathy. "Well done." It was as though my mother wanted to say more but refrained. Rather, she extended her hand, paused, and then lightly stroked my arm. "You have my admiration," she said. I ought to have mentioned that more. The words felt like leaves all around me. Seasons are too late to alter, yet it's still important in some way. "Thank you." I meant what I said. Our numbers were not exchanged. I didn't arrange to get back in touch. After burning some bridges, just leave ashes behind. However, I saw a change in myself as I watched her go. Not pardoning. That's right. That wasn't what I was expecting. I might never be. However, comprehension, possibly acknowledgement that every one of us was flawed in our own unique ways, exhibiting patterns set long before we had any influence over the situation. In actuality, the decision to cut off touch wasn't taken in a fit of rage for years. Thousands of little decisions were made every day. The decision to stay away from calling when I felt lonely, not to get in touch on holidays, not to reply to the communications that occasionally reached me via people we both knew. Every decision I made was followed by its own sorrow, introspection, and internal conflict between my survival needs and the values I had been taught. During these times, I would question whether it had been too drastic to cut them off entirely. If there might have been a compromise, cautious separation, as opposed to total separation. But then I would think of the years I spent being appreciated just for what I could provide, and never for who I was. The violation of having my identity stolen, and the treachery of discovering my apartment broken into. And I'd know deep down that the only way I could possibly recover had been to avoid touch. Brenda had always been referred to as the golden child by my father. However, gold is pliable and soft. When pressed, it bends. The fact that pressure had made me stronger was something he never comprehended. The heat of his disappointment formed it like carbon into diamond. The family you chose is the most significant. The one you create, the one who recognizes your value without requiring you to always justify it. I discovered mine in unexpected places, in friends who come to me without being asked, and in coworkers who appreciate the contributions I make to my own business, which ends up being better than I ever realized. I've discovered that self-respect is more important than both. Despite the saying that blood is more important than water to everyone who is stuck in a familial situation that drains them instead of supporting them. On the other side, there is life. It might not have the tidy conclusion we've been taught to anticipate. Peace is included, even if there aren't any heartwarming reunions or dramatic sequences of forgiveness. With holidays spent the way you choose and peaceful mornings without waking up fearing phone calls. With a deep understanding that people who were unable to see your worth never decided it. Walking away and letting the pieces fall where they may is sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for both yourself and other people. On certain days, I still dream of a family that is entire and healed of reconciliation. However, delusions and dreams are not the same thing. I now understand that it's all right for certain scars to never completely heal. It takes more than distance to break free. The issue is deprogramming. Unlearning that saying no is a sign of selfishness, that you are harsh if you have boundaries, that you are a horrible person because you choose yourself. It's continuing and the toughest labor I've ever done. However, I feel like I'm living my life on my own terms for the first time, not as a letdown to the family, not as a supporting role for Brenda, not as my mother's mediator or my father's ATM. As I am whole and full, devoid of the need for acceptance or affirmation from others, that too has a peculiar sadness. The family I never had and never will be mourned where it should have been most plentiful. I never found the unconditional love I wanted, although I didn't pick the family I was born into. I do have a great deal of flexibility in determining my own path, defining my value, and deciding how their influence will affect my future. And I make the decision to end the cycle, recover, and prosper, not in spite of them, but because I at last understood that I was worthy of more than they were prepared to provide.